When you don't know how to navigate resistance, things can be unnecessarily undesirable, unnecessarily difficult and challenging. So, before I even address this, I would like to talk about what resistance is and different forms that it can take. So when you're experiencing resistance, which I'm sure many of you are already aware, right? So y'all are just observing from my perspective, but when you experience resistance, I see that in some cases you can be aware of resistance and then you can be unaware that there is resistance.
All paths come together.
And so let's just say in this moment we're categorizing resistance that we're aware of and resistance that we're unaware of. And generally, both kinds of resistance are going to create a feeling state that is more negatively charged or not conducive to the process of allowing what it is that we are creating. Whether you are creating a state of being that is more peaceful, more joyful, or you're already in a state of joy and fulfillment and peace for the most part, it could inhibit the allowance of something that you are truly asking for in your heart, something that you are truly wanting to experience. That feeling might come up as anger, that feeling might come up as frustration. That resistance may materialize itself as, a person giving you a hard time or a circumstance that inhibits you from receiving or being able to express yourself. It might materialize as weather, raining, right? When you experience the source, what you perceive as the source of your resistance, it's not actually the source, it's your perspective that is the source, but what you perceive as the source is ultimately what is creating the resistance. So it's keeping you from what you want. And again, you can either be aware of this or you could be unaware that it is present. This resistance can also show up in such a way where you actually think that it is of service to you, and it very well may be of service to you for a time being. As I've said before, we need to grow through this process. We need to go through things in order to grow. And that is a natural evolution, that is a natural process that takes place. That is what I would call allowing. And so for a time period, we might perceive that that which is creating the resistance, the source of the resistance that we are creating within ourselves and expressing outwardly, is actually the solution. So imagine perceiving something as a solution when in actuality it causes you a resistance that you are ultimately going to have to let go of. And I can use the analogy, although it's not limited to this analogy, of masking things with a substance, like masking feelings with a substance. You might genuinely believe for a very long time, for most of your life, that utilizing a substance is really helping you to work through emotions. And in actuality, it very well might be. When you think of the level of trauma that people have gone through on this earth, especially when it was not necessarily their fault by any means, on any level, then yeah, certain substances are designed, are gifts, as to assist you to grow through these things in a way that perhaps you wouldn't be able to otherwise on this earth. So that is just an analogy, but there's even subtler things that we might not be aware of, or we might skillfully become aware of, because of our ability to remain present, our ability to do things that are good for us, right? So the more you attune and you align to things that are healthy on all levels of your being, the more you will be able to identify what is working, what is creating more flow and allowance in your life, and what is not, and what needs to be let go of. And when you're really skilled, you release attachments more effortlessly to states of being that you thought were helping, when in reality they were not. I see it in the subtleties, like in the littlest things that you say. Your words have so much power, especially when you have that emotion behind it, that belief in that word. So the word is so powerful, and you can use a word or a phrase not even being aware of how much it actually holds you back, because of the resistance that it ultimately causes in the grand scheme of things, like in all facets of your life experience, all the things that you're into, all the things that you aspire to be, and all the things that you love to do, all the things that you've had to do up until this point because of the role that you play. When we go throughout this life not being aware of what resistance is and the ways in which it's serving us, that is, I see, the cause of feeling like you're a victim, or feeling like you need to blame something or someone, when it was just a slight shift that you're more than capable of making internally so as to elicit more growth throughout your process. And we all very well may find ourselves on different levels of awareness and skill sets. And even so, there is a commonality, a thread between everyone, wherein which everyone can be elevated and supported. And not only this, supported through this elevation with one another.
So, of course, we can all grow individually and thrive from the position that we find ourselves in. Growing from where you're at is essential for lasting results. But when we can be who we are, be as we are, together, and grow together as we are all benefiting from this. It doesn't mean that everybody's got to be friends and everybody's got to be all, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with everyone else, but we all can win. So that's why I always say that you should go where you're celebrated. And if you perceive that you are not in the ways that matter to you, then go elsewhere, even if you find yourself alone. It doesn't really make sense, for me at least. I don't know about y'all, but it doesn't really make sense for me personally to have like a lot of friends and a lot of people around me, unless there is a certain level of mutual understanding and care. And I do see how that is relevant, but the specifics of it, this is going to help kind of tie it into resistance. The specifics of how I see that is relevant is unknown to me. I don't know, but I feel it. And so this is a sense of allowing, even though I'm not thinking so logically. There is an inner knowing and understanding within me that what I speak of is relevant to the topic of resistance. So I'm going to give you some examples of just slight shifts that you can catch within yourself, no matter where you're at with it, of what might be causing resistance, unnecessary resistance. And don't get me wrong, this might not be an easy thing to apply, but application is necessary for results. You can hear me talk all day and all night, but if you're not actively applying what it is that I'm sharing with you, or you don't know how, then it's just going to be another bit of information, especially if you find yourself scrolling and distracting yourself. And there's at least 150 people on this channel, I'd imagine that those of you who are watching, there is a statistical reality in which a small percentage of people are actually not scrolling. So I need you to understand how important it is, or how vital it is for you to do as little of that as possible. And prioritize that before anything else. That can create so much resistance. Oh my goodness, it can create so much resistance. So, yeah, side note, but trying, the energy of trying. You don't need to try. If you don't succeed, try again, but you don't need to try. Things flow naturally when you identify what it is that you want, what it is that you would prefer. Instead of trying to figure something out or try to make something happen. So become aware when you're trying to do that, when you're trying to make something happen, as opposed to allow something to happen. And in that moment, when you realize that you're speaking those words, come into that awareness that this very well may be causing unnecessary resistance that you're unaware of. So remember, there's resistance that you are aware of and resistance that you are unaware of. There's a source of your resistance that you are aware of. There's a source of your resistance that you are unaware of. There's a perspective that you're having that's helping you, and there's a perspective that you're having that is not helping you. And you may or may not be aware of this. The answers come to you naturally when you allow them. If you seek a particular outcome, and you are feeling very strongly within yourself the lack of that particular outcome, it could be so subtle. It doesn't have to be grand. You're going to continue to perpetuate that feeling. And actually, I see that that is a key point right there of how grand or minuscule it might be on your radar. Like, you may have 3 things that you would like to achieve in your life that seem so massive, that seem so at the top of your list, right? And then you might have other achievements that aren't as much of a priority, but they're there. You do see their significance in your process. So you might be putting in all this work to allow for that more prioritized achievement to flow, to allow it. But then these other subtler aspects, all those little micro actions and micro perspectives that are, leading you to that are going to elevate you. You're going to be that staircase to that top achievement. Your ability to allow in those spaces are equally as relevant as the process of allowing in the more massive achievements that you wish to experience.
The program is that I have to be rude, crude, and socially unacceptable.
fucking feel better. I don't have to be rude, crude, and socially. I want to be. The programs that I want to be rude, crude, and socially acceptable because people have been rude, crude, and socially acceptable towards me. So we're not fighting fire with fire. We're just existing as fire. And if fire wants to come and fucking fire me up, then it's gonna get fired. And you can create a beautiful fire that helps restore the land, or you can create an ugly fire that fucking destroys it. So fuck